Yeah, it's really, really great to be at Sangha night. Just like Bodhinaga's saying, it's still very much a highlight of my week, and I really notice the impact that it has on my mood and general inspiration. So it's really great to be here with you all. And I'm sitting here in my lounge, and I've got Vidyavartan and Hannah as my audience this evening, as well as all of you. And I was just remembering and recounting that the last talk I gave at Sangha night was a good couple of weeks before the lockdown, and I can remember being in the Blue Room at Potato Club and talking with a few people and kind of flippantly remarking on how, you know, one day we might have to stream talks to an online audience if we go into coronavirus lockdown like the rest of the world seemed to be doing. And really didn't seem like a reality that was a close reality at the time, but here we are. So it just goes to show you don't know what will happen next. Yeah, I feel remarkably close to all of you, even though we're in our own homes, and just really great to be here. So yeah, I'm giving this talk Doing Without this evening, which is part of the entire theme of Dharma in difficult times. So we're looking at how we can engage with the adversity that we find ourselves in now in ways that can support our spiritual growth and our understanding of the Dharma at this time. And tonight we're looking at doing without. So we're looking at whether we can benefit from being prevented from doing the things that we would normally do. So at the moment in this present situation, we're finding that we're not able to do a lot of the things that we would normally do as our usual routine. We can't often buy the things that we want to buy or eat what we want to eat, or we just can't do the things that we want to do. We can't go out and about to entertain ourselves, see the people that we normally see. So yeah, we're in this present situation of having to do without, really. We haven't chosen this situation, but here we are. So how can we use this this time of doing without in a way that benefits us and helps us to grow? Okay, so we could relate to this experience of deprivation, as you like, as deprivation, as a forced deprivation that we don't want, that we'd really rather not happen. We could feel quite strongly the loss of all the things that we would normally do. You may relate to feeling like that. I know that I felt like that at times. I felt that loss and the pain of not being able to do what I would normally do to kind of keep myself happy, the kind of entertainments and the usual joys that I would find in the kind of modern world, if you like. But perhaps seeing it as this kind of forced deprivation and as a loss, that could lead to quite negative mental states, where we feel a lot of blame towards whatever it is that's causing this deprivation. So perhaps it's, you know, the government that's telling us that we need to do without at the moment, or maybe it's those people that are hoarding all the food or the toilet paper, so we can't buy what we want. And if they just didn't buy all that stuff, we could get what we wanted. So you can see that, you know, we could go towards quite negative mental states at this time of doing without. But in Buddhism, there's a long tradition going right back to the Buddha of doing without and seeing doing without as a very positive practice. Seeing that if we can go without what we normally think that we need, but that we don't really need, this is a spiritual practice that can lead to growth and understanding of reality. So you may have heard of Buddhism being described as a middle way, and this describes how the spiritual path can be a middle way between asceticism on the one hand, which is extreme deprivation, kind of looking to remove any pleasures from our life as a way to try to understand reality, to have a taste of reality. So that's asceticism on the one hand, just having no pleasure. And then there's hedonism on the other hand, which is a view that would see seeking pleasure in the world, in our daily activity, as the way to be happy. If we could just fill all of our life with pleasure, not have any suffering, then we'd be happy. So Buddhism is a kind of a middle way between this hedonism on the one hand and asceticism on the other. And if we can find a way through these two views, if we could move towards that and simplify our lives, then that's the path to true freedom and true happiness. And I'm quite excited by this idea. I think that's partly because throughout my life I've enjoyed many pleasures, and I don't like the idea of having no pleasure at all in life. And yet I can also sometimes give myself a hard time and think that pleasure is somehow inherently wrong, and therefore I should kind of suffer in order to understand the truth. So it's been really helpful for me to see that there is a middle way here. And I'm excited by simplicity. I'm excited by finding pleasure in the small things of life without needing a lot of stuff or a lot of needless entertainment or mindless entertainment, but just using mindfulness and metta, loving kindness, to experience a kind of truer beauty and a truer pleasure in what is really meaningful. So that's what I'm going to be trying to share with you this evening. So going back to the Buddha then as our inspiration, he renounced all material things in his life. He renounced all worldly status, and he encouraged his followers to do the same. So the Buddha started life as a prince. He had many palaces, many dancing girls. He had all the entertainment he could wish for, but he realized that he wasn't finding happiness that way, and he saw a wandering ascetic monk, and he thought maybe there's another way of living that will help me to find freedom from suffering. And he went forth, and this is how it's traditionally known, as going forth from the household life into a life of homelessness. So he wandered around India. He only had his robe and his bowl, his begging bowl, and he'd go around different houses. People would support him by giving him food. And this was, there was a context for this in the Buddha's time. There are many people living this way, this homeless life of extreme renunciation and very, very simple life. So it's not likely that many of us will choose that option, and there's not many of us who'll go forth completely into what you could call a monastic lifestyle that is extremely simple with very, very, very few possessions. There's not so much context for that in our lives. You know, there are possibilities. People do live very simple lives, say in retreat centres or in long meditation retreats, for example, but not many of us will probably be living that sort of lifestyle. But regardless of this, there may still be ways that we could make our lives, our householder lives, much more simple. The Buddha referred to the household life as dusty, which I quite like as a kind of metaphor of kind of the complexity of the household life. And you have all your stuff, you have all your things, you have all your busy time, and gradually your life becomes dusty. And so we're looking at how we can remove that dust and have a simpler life amidst the complexity of the modern world, using the Buddha as our example. So yeah, this talk is about renunciation, and in a way this often isn't very attractive for people in the West. Sometimes the word renunciation can bring up negative connotations of having to sacrifice things that we don't want to give up, deprivation, like I've talked about, and that life could become really quite bleak and quite bland if we have to do without the things that we enjoy. So I'm going to be exploring why renunciation is important, but also how can we practically, positively include renunciation as in our practice. How can that be a positive experience for us rather than something we're going to kick back against and not want? So renunciation, it's seen as important because it helps us, the practice of renunciation, of giving things up, of doing without, helps us to free ourselves of our cycles of craving, where we're looking for things outside of ourselves to make us happy, to give us stability, to make us feel like our life's going okay. As Buddhists, we're looking to free ourselves from this craving, free ourselves from any neurotic craving, where we're depending on these external things, and therefore looking for happiness where it cannot ultimately be found, because as we often explore in the intro course and other talks, things are impermanent and they are insubstantial. So if we're really looking for an external thing and to give us all our happiness, all our stability, when that things change or we realize it's not what we thought it was, or when we experience the suffering of that change or the suffering of trying to get something inherently satisfactory out of something that just can't give us that satisfaction, then we do suffer. So renunciation can be a way of kind of unhooking and freeing ourselves from these neurotic cycles of craving. And as I said, the Buddha went forth. So renunciation is sometimes called going forth. So you're going forth from the things that you've used to rely on, things that you used to use as a way of being happy, finding pleasure. And you're moving towards something. And you may be moving towards something you're not quite that clear about yet. But gradually, maybe as you meditate or as you hear about Buddhist ideas, put them into practice, become friends with other Buddhists, you realize you're moving towards something that actually is quite beautiful, something that does contain pleasure, but pleasure in a kind of different way to what you've experienced before, and one that isn't maybe as neurotic and as laced with pain. And there's quite a practice that Buddhists take part in, which is going on retreat, and sometimes that's a really good way that we can go forth. We can choose how long we go forth for into these very different conditions where we're doing one thing at a time. There's a program, we're doing more meditation, we're spending time with other Buddhists. And we can bring this simplicity into our life through going on retreat, and then see how we can bring that simplicity into our lives as we come home from the retreat. So yeah, I'm very inspired by simplicity and contentment. It's one of the 5 precepts, and I think it's one that I particularly reflect upon and try to practice as positively as I can, along with the others. And I think maybe that is because I do derive a lot of pleasure from it. I derive pleasure from being generous and honest, but I also derive a lot of pleasure from simple pleasures, from having simplicity, from feeling like I can go without feeling any kind of deprivation or pain, and that actually I rely on very little in my life to be happy, and that gives me a lot of confidence actually. I think the practice of mindfulness can really help us in practicing simplicity and contentment. So if we can really take notice of what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're seeing and hearing, what we're experiencing in our direct experience, without needing anything beyond just that experience, then again, there's quite a lot of beauty and aesthetic sense that I find in that. It can be difficult. It's easy to say, it's difficult to put into practice. I know when I worked in the evolution shop, we had a mindfulness bell where every hour or so the bell would ting and you'd stop doing what you were doing and just try and notice your surroundings, connect with your body and your breath, and just relax. And although it was a very, very positive practice, when the mindfulness bell went, or when it was my turn to ring it, I'd often feel like, oh, I just don't want to ring the mindfulness bell. I don't want to stop, because there's that kind of seeming pleasure, there's apparent pleasure in just carrying on and doing and doing and doing. But actually, if you can get over that hump and you can stop and just do one thing at a time, connect with yourself, then there is a lot of simplicity and joy to be found in those moments. And I think that what is a practice for me as well within this is really trusting that if I am calm and still, and if I do experience contentment with very little kind of around me, little that I'm depending on, that through that practice I can be a resource to others. So it can sometimes feel a bit like, why would I reduce the things in my life? Why would I be still and calm? But my experience tells me that if I am calm and content, then I am a resource to others. I'm more connected to myself, and I'm more connected to other people, and I feel more connected to the world around me. And I think that that's a gift. It's a gift for myself, but it's a gift for other people as well to experience. So just really trusting that simplicity has value. And I do find that if I have more spaciousness in my life, particularly at this time, even, I'm working from home, I'm having Zoom calls, things like that. But if I can build in more spaciousness into my life at the moment, I'm noticing that I have this connection to myself, and I just have a lot more awareness of beauty around me, and I just feel happier. And if I'm happy, then I feel like I'm much more of a resource to others. And I know that a lot of people talk about feeling a certain kind of guilt at the moment if they're experiencing happiness or simplicity and contentment, because there's a lot of suffering in the world right now. And a lot of us may feel like we want to do something to help. And I think that's very noble. And if there are things that we can do, then that's fantastic that we can engage in that way. And I also think that whatever it is that we're engaging with, if we're able to trust in contentment and simplicity and spaciousness, that we don't need to feel guilty about the enjoyment of that, really. And we don't need to feel guilty about creating conditions for spaciousness in our life at the moment, because as I've said, we can trust that through being calm and content through the practice of renunciation and simplicity, that does mean that we're a resource to others through our positive mental states. So some people, they might say that, okay, renunciation, fair enough. We want to free ourselves from neurotic craving, but surely I can still have all the things that I would normally neurotically crave and just not neurotically crave them. They're just in my life. I've got my, all my gadgets, I've got my car, I've got, my monthly pass to the cinema, all the things that I think I need, the new shoes, all that. Can I just have those things but not feel like I need them, and not be attached to them? And there is a way that we can practice not being attached to the things that we have in our lives through having them. But really, this could be a rationalization. It could be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I do have 3 cars, but I'm not attached to them. So you do have to watch out for this rationalization. Like, could you really do without those things, or are you just telling yourself you can, but you're just going to have them anyway? And it can be tricky to work with desire and neurotic craving while we're still engaging in the activity that seems to feed it. So there's normally further we can go with our practice of renunciation. I mean, at the moment, as I'll move on to, we are in a situation of not being able to do what we can most of the time. So maybe we can just notice what it is that we've renounced, not through choice at the moment, and see if we can experience that as freedom. But generally in our lives, there's further we can go with renunciation, and we can just see, what if I didn't have that thing that I think I really need? And you might find, oh no, I really didn't need it after all. I really like this aphorism that Sangharakshita says, which is growing up and not giving up. And this is the idea that renunciation doesn't have to feel like a huge sacrifice, actually. So a child will play with a toy tractor, say, and if you try and take away the tractor, they'll get quite upset because they really, really want the tractor. But as they get older, and into their teenage years, they probably won't be playing with the same tractor anymore. And it hasn't felt like a sacrifice to them. They've just grown out of feeling the need for it. And we can look at how we can do the same, really, how we can grow up within our spiritual lives and gradually move towards pleasures that are perhaps more ethical, more skillfully derived. So I've got an example here, which is I used to listen to Radio 1 a lot. As soon as I woke up in the morning, Radio 1 would wake me up and I'd have it on in the shower. And I really love music. I still love music and listen to it often. But this listening to Radio 1 was a bit of a kind of a filler. It was a distraction. And I'd get all these pop songs, some of which I wouldn't really particularly like, some of them I would, in my head, and I'd just go around singing these pop songs in my head. And when I started to meditate, I'd go to the morning meditation at the Buddhist Center, and we'd chant the refuges and precepts in the morning. And I would find that if I then had a pop song in my head after meditation, it felt a bit felt like a kind of, what's the word? It was just in my head and I didn't want it to be there, a bit of an intrusion. But that actually, often what would start happening is I'd have the refuges and precepts in my head instead, and that felt much more pleasurable to be reflecting on, or just hearing the refuges and precepts kind of reminding me of my ethical values and the beauty of chanting and the beauty of ethics. So gradually I just stopped listening to Radio 1 so much. And that was a big part of my kind of giving up of the constant dependence on having constant input all the time, and having a more mindful, more spacious mind, really, which felt strange at first, to have a spacious mind compared to the one I had when I just had constant input, but it also felt different in a positive way. So that's my example of growing up and not giving up. An area that I find a bit more challenging, especially recently in terms of like the last 5 years, 6 years, is having a smartphone. So I grew up with a TV at the end of my bed, and I watched a lot of TV growing up, and I enjoyed that, and I still do enjoy programs. But having a smartphone means I basically got a TV in my pocket, and I've talked quite often about YouTube and how that had become an unhelpful habit of mine of watching a lot of YouTube videos, more than I really wanted to, late at night instead of going to sleep. But what I found as a way of kind of trying to renounce this dependence, if you like, what I found really helpful to kind of grow out of that. I didn't just stop doing it straight away, but I did take kind of precepts, and I tried to think, okay, what can I do? Maybe I could not go on it after 11. Maybe I could leave my phone in a different room when I go to bed. Maybe I could watch the videos that I want to watch earlier. You know, maybe I can set aside some time, so I'm not doing it late at night. And gradually, as I've done all of those things, I've got to a place where I'm really not watching very much. And I think I also just looked at the rest of my lifestyle and thought, okay, what is it that I can put into my life that I'm looking for here? Like, you know, I like watching fun music videos. Like, how can I kind of bring music and fun and dancing into my life more? And maybe I just want connection with my friends as well, and I'm lonely and I'm looking for something through my phone. But yeah, I've taken like quite clear precepts around this as well, which is I've noticed that browsing the homepage of YouTube or browsing the Facebook page, for example, is what can be really addictive. So I've taken recent precepts just to not do that anymore. So I might still watch a video, but I won't browse the homepage of YouTube, just watching things mindlessly. And that's really helped kind of kick the habit in a way. And yeah, so these are kind of examples of how you can kind of grow out of things that you're depending on that you might not want to depend on anymore. You don't necessarily have to give it up straight away, but you can take small steps to reducing and getting more of a handle on how to give it up. And desire is really tricky. When we want things, they find a way of kind of getting to us. And I also really like this phrase of Sangharakshita's, which is, we really have to wallow in it before we know it's muck. So if we're finding it really hard to stop doing things that we don't want to do anymore, maybe we just haven't really realized how mucky it is. And maybe we just have to really take notice, use mindfulness to notice, why is it maybe that I do want to stop doing these things? Because actually they're quite painful when I do them. And just really get to know that suffering, and soon enough you'll probably find you're moved towards giving it up. And we also have to be aware that if we are giving things up, and if we're doing that kind of quite intently, we might find that we start to have a bit of a kickback. It's like, as I've said, we're looking for the middle way between pleasure and as being the kind of the only source of happiness and suffering. And we need to really know what we can manage, really, and we need to be kind to ourselves. And at the moment, a lot of things have been taken away from us. A lot of our normal activities aren't available. So I think if you're noticing that you're finding that difficult, just see if there are any ways in which you can enjoy the simplicity in your life at the moment, or the renunciation that you've been kind of called upon to take part in. Sangharakshita also says that before we can reduce life to its essentials, we must determine what those essentials are. Before we can reduce life to its essentials, we must determine what those essentials are. And he's talking in relationship to enlightenment here. He's saying that we really need to know what is conducive to enlightenment, and we need to do those things. Those are what are essential to life. But we can't just reduce life down to these essentials before we know what they are, why we want to do those, why they're conducive to our own growth and our own enlightenment. So we need to be really honest with ourselves about what is essential to us in our lives, and then go from there. and if we want to take small steps to reducing what it is that we're depending on. It's quite ironic because I've got another point here about more and more and less, more and more of less and less, which is about not using the Dharma as a way to fill our lives. And Sangharashta says you can just choose a few Dharmic ideas, a few Dharmic practices, and really go deeply into those. So more and more of less and less. I kind of don't have time to go into it. So there we go. It's kind of an irony there. Just don't always need more and more Dharma. Okay, so nearing the end of the talk, I'm just going to talk now about how we could see this kind of enforced period of renunciation as a welcome chance to free ourselves. So as I've been talking, it might feel a bit enforced. Like normally if you go on a long retreat where you know you're going to have a lot less activity or a lot less contact with other people in your life, you have time to prepare for that, and you've made a choice that you're going to do less and that you're going to have less. You're not going to have the pleasures of eating what you want when you want. You're going to have simple meals 3 times a day. Normally we can choose that, and at the moment we haven't. We're in this situation now. But how can we see this as welcome rather than unwanted? So hopefully there's things in which I've talked about simplicity and contentment that can inspire you, and we can thank this situation for giving us an opportunity to do something positive that we wouldn't normally do. We've got an opportunity to notice what we do neurotically crave, what our compulsive tendencies are, and how to work with not having the opportunities to always live out our fantasies, you know. Oh, I could go to the shop now and just get some hot cross buns, and it's like, oh no, okay, I'm not going shopping for another 4 days until I really need to. So how can you manage with what you've actually just got in your cupboards? Yeah, we're no longer able to be in contact with what usually could propel us into a complex life. Maybe we can just do one thing at a time at the moment. Maybe we can even have periods of doing nothing and see what kind of stillness and contentment can come out of that spaciousness. Maybe we can meditate more and we can reflect more. Probably a lot of people who do have more time might be listening to more Dharma talks and reflecting more on the Dharma. And I've got another personal example of quite a few weeks ago, really at the beginning of the lockdown, really. I went to the allotment that my partner, deprivation, has, and we had a few hours in nature, which I'm really, really grateful that I have the capacity to be in nature at the moment. But on the way home, it was a Saturday, and I thought normally right now, if I didn't have plans on a Saturday night, I'd be thinking, well, I could go to the cinema, or I could go for a meal out, or, you know, I wonder what all my friends are doing for fun right now. And I just didn't have those options available to me. And actually, it felt like a real freedom, felt like a real opportunity just to drop down into myself, into thinking, okay, what can I creatively do at home just to have some simple pleasure in life? And I did feel very free, and I thought that was interesting because I always catch myself out when I realise how much I do still get caught up in the idea that having money and spending money is the way to be happy. You know, I don't have a lot of funds in my life, but I can usually afford to, you know, do something on a Saturday night that's entertaining. And as I've been talking about, you know, if there's pleasure in watching a film, if there's pleasure in eating nice food in a restaurant, we don't have to kind of think that's inherently wrong. But it was just that I was catching that tendency to think that I really do need to go and do these exciting things that all the other people in life are doing. And if I don't do that exciting thing, then how am I going to be happy? And it was really helpful just catching that again. You know, I do catch it again and again. You know, I think, oh no, I really do need a new pair of shoes. And if I got that particularly expensive pair of shoes, that would make me happy. And then I get the shoes and they just don't do it. Okay, so yeah, can we remember that although we haven't chosen this period of renunciation, can we use the simplicity that's available through it as a means to understand more and more about contentment and where to find it, how to find it? So this week we could be asking ourselves, maybe we could talk about this in the group, what have I been forced to give up? Can I see this as a welcome renunciation, or an opportunity to lead a less entangled life? Can I use this experience to move towards a simpler life in the future? And I'd just like to note now, right at the end of the talk, that some of us may be just as busy as we usually are. So I've been talking a lot about having more space, more time, more reflection, doing less. And actually, many of us are still working. Perhaps we're working even more than we normally do. We're just as busy. We're working from home alongside all the other demands at home. Perhaps we have more childcare demands. So if you're still having a very busy life, I'd still suggest that you can look at your routine and look at how you can find simplicity and contentment within that routine. Can you just do one thing at a time? Sometimes, maybe not all the time. Can you get a bit of space, just even if it's for a very, very short time? And if not, even if you don't have any time, can you reflect on renunciation in the terms of buying less, spending less, having less choice about what you buy and what you do with your time? Okay, so I hope there's been something in that talk that's been helpful for you. And I'm just going to end now with another quote, a final quote from Sangharakshita, which I just generally find very inspiring within this theme. It is the pauses which make beautiful the music of our lives. It is the empty spaces which give richness and significance to them. And it is stillness that makes them truly useful. Thank you.